For more on what to expect in the airline sector, let's bring in Seth Kaplan, managing partner of Airline Weekly. Seth, always good to see you. Phil was talking about the pressure that the major airlines are facing because of the low-cost carriers and that they're seeing their margins sort of erode here. You know, there was an interesting downgrade of JetBlue the other day, I believe from Raymond James, and they're saying that there was pressure on RASMs, or revenue per available seat mile, in part because of capacity growth. Does all of this mean that 2017 could be a great year for the consumer when it comes to fares?
Yeah, a great year for the consumer, although these falling airfares, at least from an airline perspective, this is a good thing, seem to at least be plateauing. You know, Delta, as early as, mid-2015, last year was saying, by the end of this year, we're going to get our hands around these falling unit revenues. Here we are a year later, and they're just about to do that. But, yeah, generally speaking, a pretty good deal for consumers, a pretty good deal for investors. Now, the question is, if fuel prices continue rising, or, should they spike, are you going to see that transfer of wealth back to the oil producers from the airlines, as happened last decade, of course, very difficult for them, or have the airlines put themselves in a position where they can basically transfer the wealth from consumers back to the oil producers, and the airlines can still do okay? Airlines think they've restructured the industry to the point that they can make money in that environment.
The transfer of wealth meaning, will the airlines have to just sort of pay up for that increase in the price of fuel, or can they pass that cost on to the consumer? We've already seen an 18% rise in WTI in the past 3 months. At what point do you think there is going to be a transfer of wealth from whomever to the oil producers?
Yeah, well, it has to go from somebody because, obviously airlines are paying these higher fuel prices. And in the past, what happened was, consumers, even though everybody always complains about airlines, the reality was that consumers a decade ago, when fuel prices were spiking, were still getting a pretty good deal. Airfares hadn't really risen, but that drove airlines, many of them, into bankruptcy. Now, because of consolidation, because of all the other things, some of the things Phil talked about, basic economy, all the segmentation, the unbundling, airlines think they've gotten it to a point where, fuel prices rise, where, yeah, they can get their hands around capacity, because that's really what it comes down to, supply and demand economics, and squeeze up airfares. So as long as fuel prices remain, at least in historical terms, rather low, a decent deal for airlines and consumers.
Yeah, I think the fuel, we can plan on it going up a little bit. You got Rex in there, and you got Governor Perry on the energy. I think that the fuel numbers are going to go up, and I think that it's going to hurt the airlines a little bit moving forward. So.
Yeah, Seth, as you know, Kenny is in the private jets business. A lot of the airlines, as Phil had mentioned, are upgrading their first-class experience, upgrading cabin experience. How good is it going to get on the commercials?
Yeah, it's getting a lot better. I mean, this is what happens when you have an industry that is no longer struggling just to get through the day, that can reinvest in its product. And don't look down, but, even in the economy cabin, as Phil mentioned, improvements there. So, what seemed a few years ago, at least in the economy cabin, to sort of be this inexorable race to the bottom, what are they going to take away next? Now, even as on one hand, yes, they're trying to offer, the major airlines offer these basic economy fares to compete for the most price-sensitive travelers of all. On the other hand, they are restoring some of that service, free snacks. United, American, and Delta are all serving free wine and beer now again on intercontinental flights, whereas none of them were doing that just a few years ago. So they can do these kinds of things. It's never going to go back to the old days where, it's all bundled, it's all included, because that just doesn't work. But they can make those investments now. They have the money to do it, to think about the long term in a way that they just couldn't do last decade.
Seth, there was a time, I don't quite remember, but there was a time where even flying commercial was almost something for the 10% or whatever. It's no longer like that. We were talking to Kenny to try to figure out when will Airline Weekly be talking about, like a seat opens up, you go on the internet, here's a seat on a private jet, we can fill this private jet, and it actually comes down to where the price point is, where people that aren't ultimate 1%ers actually start being able to fly private. Do you think that, how far away is that? Is that today, or is it 10 years? Is it our lifetime? When is it?
Yeah, some kind of Uber for disguise. Joe,
yeah.
I think, and there's definitely scope to do some of that. I think the fundamental difference between, Uber, Airbnb, what have you, and the airline industry is that the very basic economics of it don't support something to where the price point's ever going to converge, because, there is no way to transport 6, 8, 10 people on anywhere the kind of unit cost basis that you can transport 150 or 200. You still need the same pilot, just divide those costs among so few people versus so many.
That's
hard to do.
I would just say to Seth and the rest of the world is on the long-range stuff, it'll never be competitive. On the short stuff, you know, you look at the consolidation and how it moved prices up commercially. You take 6-8 executives from New York to Logan.
Yeah.
I believe that Wheels Up on the King Air 350i is more than competitive.
Seth, that's the King Air. It's a turboprop. I think.
Turboprop. It's a jet.
It's a jet, but it's you know, that brings it down a little bit too, Seth. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering how long it is, or whether it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. No question there will be a convergence, but in terms of seeing the kinds of you're not going to see basic economy fares, for example, on those kinds of aircraft. But yes, absolutely. Between new aircraft technology and new distribution technology, the Uber, that sort of thing, it'll converge. It'll never quite get there to where very price-sensitive travelers are able to do that.
Yes.
Seth, thanks. Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Likewise. Happy